Which one?
Which one are we referring to? So we could even refer to them as institutes. The Institute of Kagwanja, the Institute of Omenya. Well,
right.
Having said that, we're in the Easter festive season.
Right.
And we saw the death of Christ changed the structure we have around religion and following.
Yes.
Some argue he was the greatest activist who ever lived.
Right.
And but you see, if his body was to be found today, that story would change.
Yes.
So we put that aside. And we come many years later, we look at the demise of the enigma, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. So the death of Christ gave birth to a revolution around the world.
Yes, correct.
But what would we say the death of Raila Odinga has given birth to, politically speaking?
Right.
Because as you rightly put it, he has always been a contender in the last 5 elections.
Correct.
And actually, he had grown to become the agenda of any election.
Right.
Because people were coming out to vote for or against Raila Odinga.
Right.
It did not matter what the manifesto said about the other candidates.
Correct.
But here we are served with his the absence of his commanding presence.
Right.
You know, he was the binding force of the ODM.
Right.
Some argue he was the embodiment of the party. He was the party and the party was him.
Yes.
Now he has gone. What are we being served to? Because now
Yes.
there is no saying I'm going to vote for Raila Odinga or against Raila Odinga.
Right.
The definitions of how we are approaching the election must change.
Right.
His house by itself as ODM needs to find a direction and say, this is what we are.
Yeah.
Because we know parties don't stand for anything. It is the party leader who defines what that anything is.
Right.
But what has the death of Raila Odinga given birth to politically?
I think it's interesting. This one is very, very interesting because I didn't look at it from that perspective until you asked the question. Yeah, because here is somebody who has passed on. I mean, I think now we are heading to the 5th or 6th month. And I think the first politician, I'm even thinking about his own father, and the politics is still about him. What are we discussing here? We're still discussing Raila's approach to politics. We are still discussing Raila's approach to government and so on. And this is quite interesting that just like you're saying about Christ, that Raila might actually define Kenya's politics way beyond his death. And of course, ODM becomes a pretty interesting theater in that regard. That if you look at it, all those children of ODM and surrogates, they all claim to be pushing their father's legacy, but in different directions.
Yes.
and just building on what Peter was saying, I think that was Raila's political genius, that he sees a physical, abrasive son, and he has a terrible neighbor. This guy fights with the neighbor outside there, and other siblings are trying to stop the guy, and Raila says, "Are you sure I'm not the one who sent him?" And the son is there. Then he sees a peaceful one who's praying in the church, and he's trying to convert people from Legio Maria, and others come to report that your brother is doing 1, 2, 3, 4 things, and Raila will be saying, even the bishop is a very good friend, so he sort of has all these guys in his group, pushing for radically different agendas, apparently radically different agendas, and yet, they're sort of welcome. As I was coming, I was just reflecting. I mean, if you look at this Sifuna group, right from the start, these guys never supported the broad-based, even when Raila was around. We are making it appear that the guys are now trying to do something different now that Raila is not there, to sort of hijack the party or something like that. But that's not true. In fact, very many times, Raila had to tell people that, no, when Sifuna is speaking, I'm the one speaking. When Sifuna was seen to have been totally against the broad-based government. And I don't think, to be fair to that gentleman, I don't think his position has ever changed.
I think if we even look at the day the broad-based agreement was signed at KICC, Edwin Sifuna, and I actually, on that day when he said that, and I texted him and I asked him, I said, do you know what you've just said?
Yeah.
He said, I am speaking in my capacity as the Secretary General of ODM. And not as Edwin Sifuna.
Yes.
He said those words.
Correct.
So he gave an inclination into what his position was.
Correct.
if anybody was listening.
Exactly.
At that time.
Correct.
So he's not swayed too far off, is what you are saying, from his original position. Exactly. So we should not be surprised?
And no, in fact, I think this is what makes it very exciting. Because, again, now we're still talking about the same Raila. Raila himself kept saying that they had only lent experts to the UDA government. And he said that over and over again. There is no point where Raila said that now we ODM are in government. In fact, if you see that, this is a narrative that's actually being pushed by another group of siblings who actually now want to be fully there. But again, to be fair to the Enigma, he was quite clear that they had lent 4 experts, 4, and he was very specific to the UDA government. But again, now to agree with Prof here, this is what was fascinating about Raila's politics, that he was actually able to, and using different models. His model was never one. He was actually able to have conversations with the government of the day and be able to have conversations with very, very important constituencies of the day. In this instance, it was the people themselves. Because again, if you check the build-up to this, we had the Sufuria movement. That was basically an ODM thing, fighting for the economy and so on. That was before the fallout with Rigathi.
Yeah.
Then we end up with the Gen Z revolution. And the Gen Z revolution was basically pushing for exactly the same thing Raila was pushing for. Then Raila comes on this other side and basically they end up with the so-called expert lent to the Ruto government and says it's important to stabilize the country. I remember him saying those things, that what do you expect, the country to happen? But on the other hand, we knew Raila. And we knew that his spirit was still with this Gen Z revolution and so on. And I think that is now what the Sifuna faction were able to do inside of ODM. That they were able to connect directly with the people, connect directly with the popular movements and so on. And then on the other hand, initially it was just the 4. The 4 were then able to negotiate for resources within government. Now what has happened is that a number of people now have sort of expanded the space of the 4 to claim that it was the overall space of ODM, that everybody in ODM was meant to have been there. I think, so that is interesting. The last point I want to highlight on this one is the Odingas themselves, because we never actually saw any fights within the Odinga family when Raila was there anyway. Yeah, so and I think that was very interesting, because they're a relatively political family, but sort of Raila again was able to offer leadership as a sibling there, and all within the party. We had the Mbadi group in government. We had the Odingas enjoying whatever they're enjoying in East African community, and Oburu in Senate quietly there and so on. Then of course we had this Sifuna group and stuff. Exit Raila. Now the family itself really has an issue. We are seeing Oburu trying to contain them. We are seeing Winnie jumping from one faction to the other. We are seeing the mother in UNEP and so on. Yeah. So basically, I think the only thing that's happening is that we really don't have that central figure that then ties all these apparently conflicting positions. That figure was Raila actually. And that figure cannot be replicated, really.
Yes, I want to disagree with you. That figure was not Raila.
Yes.
If you